We're here with Jeff Krukoff from Dynamic Investments to talk about today's smoking topic, which he'd like to speak about the Great Resignation. So Jeff, thanks very much for joining us today. The Great Resignation is on people's lips. What's happening out there? What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, I just find it very interesting to kind of see what trends are coming about as a result of the pandemic. And thanks for having me to chat about it. But I think this whole time, you look back to March 2020 when things really kind of got real, and I think a few of us thought it was like 4 or 6 weeks we'll probably figure this out and kind of lives will be back to normal. And it was pretty quickly that we all realized that things were going to have a little more lasting impact. I'm not sure I would have guessed 18 months later we'd still be in the midst of it. But I find it very interesting, just some of the trends that people have kind of predicted are going to happen, and maybe some are and aren't. But I think the pandemic has kind of really forced all of us to rethink how we work, how we live, where we live. We've seen, technological changes. We've certainly seen some societal changes and political changes. So I always find it interesting to think about, what is this changing, or what is this creating going forward, and how do things differ? And originally, when you go back to March 2020, and some of the predictions were pretty dire. I mean, people were really comparing this to the Great Depression. Mm-hmm. Obviously, globally, central banks and governments came to the aid, and came in with unprecedented levels of support. So those areas of employment and sectors of the economy, be it kind of travel and tourism and retail and hospitality, had some support. But what we've seen, and I was reading some articles recently here from the Wall Street Journal and from Harvard Business Review, is that this year in 2021, between April and July, at least in the U.S., we've seen record levels of resignations, and they're sitting at now, I think, with like 10 to 12 million job openings south of the border. So they've got this huge swath of jobs to fill, and yet people are actually quitting their jobs in record numbers too. And so I kind of looked a little bit behind the scenes, and it's not necessarily the frontline workers. It's not the kind of the lower wage or the younger workers. A lot of it is 30 to 45-year-old kind of mid-career professionals that are up and quitting for various reasons. So I find it really interesting how it's impacting us, and whether those are financial decisions or lifestyle decisions or health and safety decisions. I think it's just very, very interesting kind of where we go from here, and whether you're an employer or an employee. I think it has a lot of kind of implications for how you view your business and your life going forward.
Yeah, that's interesting, because a lot of the conversations we've had on this podcast have been around, when do people go back to the office? When do people get back to work normally? And so this is a different take, looking at people leaving their jobs and good jobs and not returning. Yeah. So it makes you wonder, where do they go? Where does the income come from now that they were accustomed to living with? Well, maybe they've made a lifestyle change that, they realize they don't need the income that they used to have, and they want to simplify their life. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things going into it, because originally people were probably quite concerned about their finances. Mm-hmm. We saw the stock market tumble pretty quickly in March of last year, and unfortunately people lost jobs and lost wages, and there were bankruptcies, there were business closures. But also, as things have kind of evolved from there, we've also seen people do quite well financially in some cases. It's really not fair, kind of this division of the winners versus the losers that have kind of been created from COVID. But in some cases, people might be kind of ignoring the financial implications and kind of going with their heart, whether it's, I've been closer to my family the last year than I have been in a long time. I'd like to continue that. Maybe it's this realization that what I'm doing is not my passion, and you have kind of this brush with death, so to speak, and maybe I need to follow my heart a little bit more. I don't know. I think there's a lot of motivating factors behind it.
I think would be that. It's a catalyst for change, but I think it's like everything else. You might go that way. How many is it going to stick?
Well, yeah.
We all want to change in all sorts of ways, and we find it's very difficult to change. So, to me, resigning a good paying job means you've got something else lined up in my eyes, or you're, like Tyler said, you're off to, scour the world, forget about COVID. I don't care. I'm going on trips, because who knows where the world's going to be. And if I need to get a job, I'm well educated or whatever, I can get a job. And so I think that sense of it is that most of those people will return to the workforce. There's not that many people in the 30 to 45 age range who are completely set for life and could stand to retire. I mean, we've been down the road and with talking retirement with people for years. If you retire too early, like, who are you going to be hanging with?
Yeah.
You ever talk to a 65-year-old when you're 45? Like, you're from different generations. There's not a whole lot to reminisce about.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I think people are just tired and pissed off with the way everything's going, and they're making some pretty significant decisions based on those things, and are just going to wing it and see what happens, and go back to work if they have to.
Yeah.
I mean, remember when Trump was first elected, we were supposed to get an influx of people from the States living in Canada. I don't know how many of them moved to Canada, but the same thing, I'm going to quit my job. This is garbage. I'm not going to work like this. I'm quitting my job. Well, you have to have employment. You have to make money from somewhere.
Yeah.
So I don't know where people are going to go for jobs. I mean, I think people have a belief that they're going to be able to just go anywhere and pick up a job. And maybe some people can.
Yeah. Well, and I think it'd be interesting to see kind of when the financial reality sets in, because one of the interesting things I think we've seen from this pandemic is that people are sitting on record amounts of savings, because there's been limited ways you could go and spend the money, and certainly there's been some of the government support programs. Mm-hmm. So I think people are, like, in general are feeling a little bit flush in some cases, at least on the aggregate. Certainly not everybody is. Yeah. And not being able to spend that money, feeling like I've got a good savings buffer. But now we're maybe transitioning to a period where some of the support programs aren't going to be as prominent, and people are talking about inflation as well. So what does that do to kind of the cost of living, whether it's your groceries, your bills, whatever it might be, the cost of heating your home? All of a sudden, does that catch up pretty quick, where those savings start to dwindle and the monthly expenses kind of start tracking up again, and you go, oh, guess I got to get back to work. I don't know.
Yeah, even leisure costs are going to go through the roof. Mm-hmm. Everybody's going to want to do it. So, maybe some of these people who are resigning, maybe they're resigning, but it might be due to employment policies. That you have to come back to the office or those type of things. Maybe they're not truly out of the workforce. Maybe they've become a consultant, and they're just contracting themselves. They've decided they want to work from home. Their employer wanted them to come back. Well, whatever. I know enough about my industry, and I'm confident enough, and some people have probably taken that plunge, which I think is great. To me, entrepreneurship is a great way to build wealth in society, and it's a great way to build a good society. So the more entrepreneurs, in my mind, the better. Yeah. So if that's the leap they're making because they don't feel their employer's looking after them or making the right decisions for them, off you go. I have no qualms about that.
Yeah.
I find probably in the last few years, it seems to be all these movements of people trying to force their employer to do certain things. It's quite interesting. Well, you're employed by this person. You might not have a job here, type thing. Well, no, we don't like the way they're doing it. We want them to do this instead. I'm thinking, wow, are you a shareholder of the company or are you an employee of the company?
Yeah.
Always interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think you can look at it from, the couple of different standpoints too, and I agree. I think the more flexibility, the better. So whether that means becoming a consultant, becoming an entrepreneur, starting your own business, maybe it's working part-time or flex hours. Like I think there's enough work out there to accommodate different people's talents and lifestyle preferences. Sure. And if you want to work from Costa Rica, I think you could probably do that now pretty easily in a lot of cases. Yeah. So why not? If you're an employer and you just want the best talent out there, well, if it's only 20 hours a week or they live somewhere else, maybe that's something you're willing to accept to get that person. And so, I think you guys work with a lot of small business owners and a lot of entrepreneurs. I imagine from their standpoint, they're seeing it as a bit of a risk, looking at their existing crop of employees going, oh, geez, well, are some of these people unhappy and thinking of leaving? You can also look at it from the other standpoint where you go, there might be some really talented people that we could attract based on either our flexible working arrangements or career advancement or just doing something that they believe in versus just stroking the largest salary check. So it'll be really interesting kind of where this all ends up from both kind of player standpoints.
Yeah, it's going to be something that's studied in school, from now forward, just like you look back and study the effects of World War II and how it changed demographics and the way populations worked back then and the baby boom that resulted from it and all the rest of it, all the different changes that came from that time when the whole world was being affected by something. So
totally,
it'll be interesting to see.
If you can work from anywhere in the world, then that means your employer can hire anyone from anywhere in the world. So the value of what you feel your wage is might not be that same value
that's a good point.
A bigger pool.
Are you saying I might get outsourced?
Yeah, I don't know.
We talked to an accountant who was discussing that. He was like, my staff wants to work from home, and they're just doing simple data entry for my year ends. I like having them in the office because I can immediately work with them and get things done more quickly. I don't want them to work from home, but if they're going to shift and work from home, why don't I just hire somebody from, maybe it's India, where I can get a cheaper employee, and send them the files to key in that I need keyed in, and away we go. So that would be a risk, I guess, to the employees that maybe want to shop around for their jobs a bit more and work.
There is a certain set of jobs for sure I think can be done remotely and you can work anywhere. But what was I reading? I can't remember. It was an article of some kind, but it was talking about people's efficiency. A lot of people feel they're more efficient at home. It's Microsoft. Microsoft did it within their own, anonymously, all the workers of Microsoft, and they found that they were not collaborating as much when they were all working remotely, and the collaboration with other departments was almost, wiped out.
Yeah.
That went way down. So it was just the collaboration goes down, and somebody who would be considered in a management position's performance also suffered a bit. And I think we've talked about this when, for example, when we were all at home, for me to type a message to an assistant or an associate to do something for me, I might as well just do it myself.
Yeah.
There's something I said about like going around the corner. I'm sure they don't like me showing up in the door for anyone going, hey, can you do this right now? But that's just the business. That's the way we run things. And when everybody was at home, I was doing most of all the stuff that I normally didn't do. And so I wasn't doing half the things that I would normally do. And so if you talk to them, they'd be like, well, yeah, I was way more efficient at home. Well, it's because I wasn't giving you all the crap I don't normally give you. So the communication, I think, is a big issue here, that even though we have the ability to communicate from home and everything, some of us are not great typers. Some of us don't answer phones.
Yeah.
So you could be trying to call to get someone to work with you on something, and they're not ready for you at that second. Then all you're doing is just setting meeting times all over the map and maybe not being as productive. So I found I was not as productive in those situations, whereas some people would claim that they're much more productive. And I would think that might have to do with A, some people are just better working on their own, or B, they're better at not having to receive data to work on.
Well, and let's face it too. I mean, I think people in general are a pretty bad judge at how much they get done in the course of a day.
Sure.
Like, and I'm sure I'm guilty of it too, where you put it in a 8-hour, 9-hour day or whatever it is, and go, man, I felt busy today, and then you look at what you actually got done, and I had to respond to some emails, and I had to answer this call, and I snuck away for a snack a couple of times, and so efficiency is one thing, but I don't think maximum efficiency is necessarily always your goal, because you miss out on all those other things that happen in the course of a day, and whether it's just a little bit of BS around the water cooler, or some conversations, and like, hey, I was thinking about this the other day, and I think a tough one too for a lot of companies, and I feel like I'm missing is just company culture as well.
Yeah.
You're surrounded by your peers, and you have this common goal, this common sense of unity, and this is what we're doing, and we're a team, and when you take that away, then it becomes a little bit tougher.
Mm-hmm. How about the people who've been hired during the pandemic and never met anybody at their firm?
Yeah.
How are you ever going to get promoted?
You're just a floating name on an email.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like it's going to be interesting. There's going to have to be some form of, and let's face it, maybe it's going to all sort itself out with perks and pay. You want to work from home? Guess what? That's your lifestyle you're choosing. You don't want to do the 2-day per week drive to the city to to be here like we want you, fine. You can work 3 days a week. This is your pay now.
Yeah.
Your job is reduced, and some people might take that because
I
they're
think
like,
a lot of people would.
I'll take the reduction. So, I've never seen so many dogs being walked throughout the day since the pandemic started. There's dogs everywhere, people walking everywhere.
All the lawns are immaculate.
That's right.
All the lawns are immaculate.
So
It's tough to keep up.
Maybe that's what you want to do, and you're willing to, instead of making 80,000 a year, you're going to make 60.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. But I think, of course, the first step of all this is, no, I want all of this, but I still want you to pay me 80.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that's all going to sort out. But I think we need to start looking at the more flex type stuff. Even our clients that are partially retired, their employers are still calling them to do some work, and some of them decided to stay on for 5-6 more years at 2 days a week.
Yeah.
And it's great for them. They think, I'm tied into something still. The people I work with, I still talk to. I get all this other time to do these other things. It's a great. So, we have these hard kind of definitive dates in our mind that this is the day I retire, and I don't, we all pick stuff up in retirement to do that fills our time. But some people decided that they still want to, have a couple of days of work, and maybe they can now retire early because they're going to work 2 days a week. Employers, I think, are becoming a bit more flexible in that it's, well, if you're not doing at least, 30 hours a week, nobody can work here. We don't do part-time. I think that's all changed, and all going to change for the better for people.
Yeah, if you want the best people, then be willing to be a little bit flexible, and there's give and take from both sides.
For sure. And I think people are willing to give up money for it too.
Yeah.
To have what their comfort level is, to work in their pink slippers, and not and be close to their family at home or whatever, to be out of a city. Some people are only living in a city because that's where their job is.
Yeah.
They can be out of the city, they're going to go, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
You could be working from Yellowknife, man.
I'm going back.
I'm going back.
back.
There you go.
Well, that was great, Jeff. Thanks very much for sharing your thoughts on the Great Resignation, and thanks for joining us on Smokin Bulls with our smoking topic.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of Smokin Bulls. To find out more about us, go to smokinbulls.com or follow us on social media.